Should I be looking at you or the camera? Sure, that's fantastic.
Pretty little face.
Is that close enough? Matt Holt, 17 years. It's what I've always wanted to do. You know, when I was a kid, like 5 years old, I was turned on to Johnny Carson, and it's kind of what got me started, you know. I was doing a show. It was the biggest show I'd done to that point. It was a theater. It was like 700 people in the crowd. I'd just done radio that morning to promote the show. And while I was on stage, I did my act or whatever. And then when I was done, my brother was in the crowd and some friends. We all went out to have, a beer afterwards. And he had told me that when I was on stage and I started into one of my jokes, this guy in front of him hit his friend and said, "Oh, this is a good one." Meaning they had heard me on the radio that day and they already remembered my material, which was great. That meant that what I was doing was like connecting with people. My process is unlike probably most. I'm pretty organic. Everything I talk about is a real life situation, and the first time I've told it happened on stage. I've never once successfully written anything down on paper to try on stage. I did write a one-man show in 2014 that was the first thing I ever constructed from nothing and wrote it down. But even that, those are personal stories that I just found a way to talk about. But for the most part, even my closer is a story that I was telling people. It's a true story. I was telling other comics, and they're like, "So are you telling that on stage?" I'm like, "No." Like, you really need to. And then I went up that night and I told it on stage for the first time. And then within about 6 weeks, it became my closer. So almost everything I do on stage the first time. I've never once practiced anything. I've never stood in front of a mirror with a hairbrush. Well, why would I have a hairbrush, first of all? But I've never sat there and I've never practiced anything, ever, ever, ever. One of the biggest tools in this business is learning how to embrace silence. And failure is really nothing more than silence until you get to the next thing. We're all going to fail. There are going to be things that work 99% of the time. One night it's not going to work. It doesn't mean that it's not a good bit or a good joke or whatever. It just didn't fire. So you just embrace that silence, you live in the silence, and you move on to the next thing. If you get hung up on it, then your whole set is going to just spiral the drain. So I just move on. Oh God, I don't know. I was in the corporate world for years. I was in telecommunications from the time I got out of high school. I started with AT&T right out of high school. And I did that for about 12 years, went through a downsize, and then I was a corporate trainer, then I was a consultant for a while. I mean, I just stayed in that business. My last day job, I was a GM for a cable company. And at that time, I was working 50 hours a week, and I was still doing 22 weeks on the road. And it was just too much of a load, and I decided which one I wanted to do, and there was no question. I quit the corporate job. So, unfortunately, without comedy, I'd probably be in that space. I'd be miserable. Everything. I mean, it's my livelihood. It's my dream. It's my passion. It's everything. You know, the relationships I have in my life, for the most part, I've met. You know, I've achieved those through comedy. I mean, my girlfriend I met that way, and everyone who's important to me typically has come either from comedy or they've been supportive of my dream all this time. So I'd be nowhere without it.